Hello and welcome back to the Life Beyond Limits podcast. This week I'm joined by Hannah Garner, who is a confidence and mindset coach and podcast host, helping women tap into their own unique power, find their magic and live an abundantly confident life, where self-doubt, negative self-talk and negative thought patterns are no longer the reason holding them back from their life, relationships and business. Hannah recently quit her high-paid job, rented a house out and moved back in with her parents, and went on a journey to figure out how she could become her own boss and what that looked like. This was something that she'd always wanted to do. But despite knowing that she'd done the right thing, self-doubt kicked in big time with her, and she was constantly questioning whether she had made the right choice. Had she made a mistake? Was she capable enough to pivot into the coaching role? After embarking on inner work, she has found the confidence to launch a podcast, create a coaching business, and has started to grow that to now create the life that she wants rather than the one working in the corporate side. So welcome, Hannah. It's lovely to have you on the show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm fantastic. Thank you. I'm really excited because this is my first time actually as a guest on a podcast. So I'm really excited to see how it goes.
And we met because we both had the same thing in the fact that we both put posts out and got amazing responses for people who want to come on to the podcast. So I'm pleased that I'm your first one. When I met you, I loved your energy and I loved your enthusiasm and your story. And I know that self-doubt has played a huge part because it is a big thing to go from working in a high-paid job that that's reliable, where you've got your independence, and to give all that up and to move back in with your parents while trying to figure out how to break into the entrepreneurial world, which is incredibly lonely and tough, but amazing at the same time. It is very scary. And so I'd love to know how you navigated through that, but more importantly, sort of what led you to make that decision to go from, consistent salary and a reliable job to jump into this business?
Well, yeah, my story is probably a little bit different to some in the sense of I've always known since I was a child that I wanted to be my own boss. I was constantly coming up with ideas. My mum always used to say to me, write them down, write them down. And unfortunately for me, I never did. Maybe there was $1 million idea in there, but I always was that way inclined. And I never really knew what I wanted to do. As you progress through school and they're like, what subjects do you want to do? And I was kind of really good at when I say really good, I was above average in everything in terms of grades, but nothing really stuck out to me. And then I also got to a point where I was at college and they were like, think about university. And to be honest, I thought, why am I paying loads of money to go do something that I'm probably not going to show up for? I didn't want to be a doctor or something where you need that kind of university level degree. And there wasn't much support from my college. I knew I wanted money. And I just thought, what the hell can I do? And luckily for me, my parents were really supportive and always have been in terms of maybe not doing the norm. There was no, even though they'd gone to university, there was no pressure for me to do a particular career route or follow in their footsteps, because they knew that whatever I do, I'd give it my all. And, I'd shown that with grades in the past without their interference. So I kind of was thinking, how can I get money? How can I learn about business? And that's when I came across accountancy, and I didn't really know much about it. But the great thing was, at the time for me, I didn't need a degree to do it. So I was like, right, this is a great start because I can start earning money. I'm not in a dead end job. It's a career progression. I'm going to learn about business. I'm not the best at maths. Probably maths was one of my weaker subjects, but I was told, you meet clients, you get taught things, and there was computers and calculators. So I was like, how hard can it be? So I went through quite a vigorous interview process and managed to get the first job kind of school leaver program that I was introduced to, which I was really grateful for. And it was really tough, actually. Because you had to go through about 5 different things, tests and multiple interviews, all of that. And so I was like, right, this is it. I'm going into a career. Yay me. I'm going to be earning money. So that's what I did. And you know what, in hindsight, it was definitely beneficial. It was definitely meant for me because it really gave me a great introduction to businesses, because I was going to different companies and seeing how they worked, looking at their finances. And so from that point of view, it was great. But when I started doing it, I was studying at the same time as well to become chartered. So I was working crazy hours. I was driving a lot. I was, missing out a lot at that age as well, because all my friends had gone to uni, but I was working and then having to study in the evenings. And so I barely had weekends to myself either, because I'd sometimes be driving down to a client on Sunday. And so it was just a bit wild. So I wasn't really getting the kind of early 20s experience, bar the odd trip to my friends' university halls. And I was kind of going along and thinking, yeah, this is great. I'm earning good money. And every year I got a little bit more money because I got close to qualification. But I just felt like something was really missing. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I was just feeling stressed. I was feeling kind of really stuck. And to begin the first year or two, probably not, because there was a lot. It was, you're meeting new people. It was really exciting. You were earning like way above people because they were at uni. And then it got to a point where I was like, I don't think this is going to be for me for the next 40 years. Not saying that I didn't enjoy it. There was elements that I definitely did, but I was thinking, I'm working so hard for somebody else. If I work this hard for myself, what could I do? So that kind of continued. But as I said, I was committed to doing the exams, and that takes about 4 years because you're working full time as well. And they're very hard. They're like equivalent of master's degree, like less than 50% in the world actually pass them, like as a statistic. So I was like, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it, because otherwise I'm going to have to pay the company back. And as I said, I was kind of getting by because I was meeting new people at the client. So that was really interesting to me. I love meeting new people. So it got to the end of the 4 years, and I thought maybe a change in role will help. Maybe if I go into finance in another role, that would be really helpful. So I decided after a year to go into that and move into industry. And I worked for a retail company in finance. And that's when it really highlighted to me how much, as I was progressing my career, I was going to have to sacrifice a lot. I obviously want a family at some point in my life. And I could see, like, my financial director was a woman. I was quite lucky to be surrounded by really great women. And she had no kids. Obviously, I don't know the background to whether that was a choice or not. But ultimately, for me, the amount of hours she was working, and what the financial controller, she was always late picking up her kids. She couldn't go to school plays, all of this stuff. And I know that's quite common amongst working women, but for me, that wasn't something I was prepared to let go completely. I really wanted to be able to, when I'm a mum, I want to be able to give my time and attention, but also have that financial independence. That's so important to me. I've always been super, super independent, even as a young child. I think I learned to iron at like 4 because I was just like, Mum, can I do that? Like, let me help. So I've always wanted to be really independent. And, as much as I want to have that solid relationship and have a guy help, without, at the same time, I wanted to know that I can pay for my own way. I can do my own things. I don't have to need anybody else except myself in that sense. So I was thinking, how on earth am I going to do that? So I kind of got to a point where I was burnt out. I was working long hours. I was stressed. I wasn't fulfilled. And I was feeling like I knew I needed to do something else. And it got to the point where I just said to my mum, I said, this is like killing me. And it sounds, at the time, I was really good at masking it. But in hindsight, looking back at how well I am now and how healthy I am now, it really was taking a toll on my body. I didn't sleep well. I had less than 5 hours sleep. I was constantly wired. My eyes were bloodshot and red. I've got photos of myself with like the most red eyes, and I didn't even realize at the time. It was just so normal to me. And she could tell I just hated it. I think the main bit being, I felt I was boxed in. I couldn't really go and do the things, my personality is very much sharing, bringing value, helping people, teaching, managing people. And I couldn't do that. I was just behind a desk. And I didn't really see how I could incorporate that into my role, because there wasn't that kind of option in that work environment. So I just said to mum, I said, I need to do something. I need to quit my job before I have kids. I need to do something. And she came back to me a few weeks later, and that was kind of in one of the worst days. And she said, look, Hannah, I've been talking to your dad, and I actually, we agree, we can see it's having detrimental impact on you. And we would be happy if you want to temporarily move back in and kind of pursue your entrepreneurial dreams like you always have. And at first I was like, no way can I do that. Like, that's too much. And then once that idea had been planted in my head, all I could think about was leaving that job. And I thought, right, I need to do this, because I'm not going to get this opportunity again. I'm very lucky that my parents offered to do that. You know, yes, I did have a house, but I bought it on the basis that I could rent it out anyway. So I knew it was very rentable. So I thought, let's do this. So I built up the courage to hand in my notice, and I had a 3-month notice period because in finance, it's normally a bit longer than an average job. And so I did that, and it was done. I handed it in. I was really, really nervous because I didn't know how my financial director was going to react. And then I was like, this is it. This is it. This feels great. So I did that. And then I got really excited. I was actually working a network marketing job alongside that. I've been using the skincare for a while. And so I thought, well, maybe when I leave, I'll just start pursuing that first. And that was great. And I still do that. And I look after my customers. But when I left, I suddenly was like, what the heck do I do? Everyone kept saying to me, you're so brave, you're so fearless, I wish I could do that. And I didn't really understand the weight of what people were saying until I was suddenly at home at my parents', sold all my furniture, my house was rented, and it was day one of being an entrepreneur. And I didn't really have a plan. And I wouldn't recommend this in hindsight for most people, unless it's affecting your physical or mental health, like it was for me. I wouldn't recommend just going cold turkey, not having an income, not having a backup, anything like that. I definitely maybe do it in a slightly different way. But for me, that was like, I'm a all or nothing person. So I just went all in. And then I was sitting in the room like, so then what do I do now? And it was just one of those moments where you're like, wow, I really did that. And that is when all of a sudden, all of these thoughts started pouring into my head about, okay, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Can I do this? What does that look like? How can I grow my business? What resources do I have? How do I find a mentor? All of these things. And it was a little bit overwhelming, I'm not going to lie. So that's kind of like my background and how I got to where it was. But I think for me, and I'll just add this in, maybe some of your listeners might not know about this, but for those that may do, in my human design, I am a manifesting generator, and I've only been learning about this for the last year and a half. But as part of that, my design type is to basically, when I'm in alignment and I'm satisfied, what that looks like is I am meant to pivot when things are no longer lighting me up. I'm meant to be multi-directional. I'm meant to go A to Z to D and not have any line. And prior to knowing about human design, I guess I'd always kind of followed that, but didn't really understand that, and I thought that was an issue. I thought that was a problem. I thought that was a weakness of mine, that I didn't necessarily see things through, that I was a quitter, all of that. But actually, in hindsight, I was getting burnt out because I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't doing enough that was filling me up. And so then for me to go and pivot was actually me moving into living in my design more. And as I said, now I know that it makes so much sense. But at the time, it was really bloody scary, to put it nicely.
I'm smiling because I honestly feel like you're a younger version of me. Everything you're saying is a lot of what I thought. I'm a manifesting generator as well, actually. And I'm just starting to get into that a lot more and really understanding it. And I think it is incredible. But growing up, I always knew that I wanted more. I was not particularly good at authority or being told what to do. And not that I was rude or rebellious in any way. It just the thought of being in an office or like an everyday job just felt very trapped and like a caged animal for me. And I wanted to be bit more free spirited. I was made redundant rather than quitting my job. But again, then kind of stepping away from that, knowing that this is your opportunity to then be like, whoa, now what does that mean?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? I'd love to kind of just dive into that a bit more, because I think, there's a lot of people that stay in jobs that are very unfulfilling, that don't satisfy them, but they have a massive fear of, well, I've got a mortgage to pay, it's not too bad, I've got great friends there, whatever, it gives me a good lifestyle, etc., etc. And they almost compromise their happiness and well-being for the security of financial and friendship. And the reality is, obviously, you can get that when you step out. it's something you are responsible for, rather than getting a salary that is a non-negotiable, comes in every month. It's very different, but it's a limitless supply rather than a capped supply. But that aside, there are a lot of people that feel trapped in this cycle and might not even know that they're unhappy, because they don't ever check in and see for themselves that they are. Very similar to what you were saying, in the fact that only now when you look back that you see that you have bloodshot eyes and you didn't feel great, because you know what feeling great is now, because you feel it. And I think is the one thing that petrifies me the most, is that so many people just accept that way of living because that's how they've been brought up to live.
And
that's their, the expectation of society: go to school, go to uni, get a job, have a mortgage, get a pension, blah 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 blah. And the reality is that doesn't suit everybody. You doesn't suit you. And you can tell in your journey when you were working that you're clearly very self-motivated and driven, but you're also searching for that missing thing. By well, this will give me the money, and you love making money, and I love that you love making money, but then it was like, but that's not fulfilling me, let me try this. That's still not, and it was almost reaffirming that actually, well, I've tried all these things and they're not working. But to then take that leap, I'd love you to talk me through the first couple of weeks of what you did, and the emotions that, like you touched on it earlier, like, have I made the right thing, a right decision? Have I made a mistake? But what you did internally to help you to keep that dream alive and to keep focused, because whenever we make decisions, the first couple of weeks, months are the hardest, because that's when our resistance is at the highest, because we're going against everything we know. And it's very easy to fall back into the comfort. And I think when people start to hear how other people have navigated through that, it gives them hope that it's possible. So I'd love for you to just share how you navigated through that. Was there any strategies or whatever that you turned to?
So I'm definitely going to dive into that. I just want to add first, for anybody who is listening to this feeling stuck, firstly, just quickly, you don't necessarily have to want to be an entrepreneur to cultivate a life that you dream of. It doesn't have to look the same as everybody else. So for me, that was and that was my ambition. But for some people, it's just a case of finding jobs that you love, even if it's in a 9-to-5 setting, but also putting your priorities, your needs, your desires first. And so if that means taking less pay, but having a less stressful job, or taking a career change, all of that can be possible for anybody. So when I'm talking about this, use what I'm saying as inspiration and motivation for anybody. It doesn't have to just be for entrepreneurship. And I think cultivating the life that you deserve is so important, because ultimately we can't get our health back. So if we're constantly undermining our health and putting our health needs first, we're going to pay for it later. So it doesn't blooming matter how much money you've got if you're mentally and physically and emotionally drained and stressed consistently, which a lot of the I think population have been for a while, and I think COVID's really highlighted that, because when people suddenly had like, I understand there were mental stresses and nuances with that as well, but actually having to not commute, not have the stress of work colleagues and all of that, they suddenly realized, whoa, hold on a minute, I was putting up with that. I think it really highlighted that. So definitely use this conversation to inspire you to make small changes. As I said, it doesn't have to be as drastic as I did, and it can be done slowly and surely, but definitely worth doing. So for me, I'm not going to lie to you, I know that I definitely had a bit of a comfort blanket, in the sense of my parents had agreed to let me move home. I know that's not possible for everybody. I'm aware of that and I'm grateful for that. But I honestly would have done it regardless. I would have probably had to figure out a slightly different way, as I said. And so for people in this situation wanting to make a change and saying, I did have a mortgage still, I still had bills to pay. I couldn't just suddenly have no money coming in. But I would say, there's lots of ways you can work around that. But the first few weeks honestly felt like a holiday, because I think I was just so ready to not be working that I actually just rested. So for me, actually, maybe compared to some people, I wasn't worrying, I wasn't panicking, I didn't have, maybe, as you say, the fears kicking in immediately, because I actually just, my body was just like, oh, I can rest for a minute. So actually the first few weeks didn't feel real. I felt like as though I was going to actually go back to work, and this was just a temporary kind of longer extended holiday. But I think for me, so I quit my job end of September 19. So kind of the first month or two, because Christmas came up and I was just kind of like, yay, get a little part-time job just to keep some money coming in, building my business, getting to kind of do the coffee dates with my business friends who were part of my network marketing company. All of that was kind of great. And I went to events, I did the things, and I was like, this is great. But then after Christmas, I think the reality really kicked in of, okay, I really need to start figuring out exactly what I want to do, how I'm going to make money that's sustainable and also consistent. And what does that look like? Who can I speak to? And that in the January, that's when I started getting really kind of sucked into a hole of how on earth do I do this? So the self-doubt was really kind of, okay, the first few months haven't gone as planned, you've kind of taken it easy, let's do this, let's go all in. And I was in a bit of a weird space because I kind of had this framework, because with the network marketing, there's a system and there's a framework, and it helps people succeed if you go all in. But I still feel like I wanted to make it my own, which you definitely can. But I was thinking, for the last 7 years, I don't even know who I am as a person, really, because I'd just been doing a job. So I kind of was trying to figure out who I was at the same time, which sounds wild. But if somebody had said to me at that time, what makes you happy? I couldn't have answered the question, which is sad. And that's probably a reality for most people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I was thinking, wait, I don't even know, apart from holidays, I used to work a lot and spend a lot of money on holidays. That was my only thing. But obviously when you're trying to build a business and save money, and I'd cut back all of my overheads, a holiday wasn't even on my priority list. So that was that taken out of the equation. So I was trying to figure out who I was at that time and how I could become this entrepreneur. And so I'd been doing mindset and for a while now. I've been on a self-development journey. It was very present in my life, but there wasn't really any structure to it. There wasn't really any kind of reason for it. I just used to watch motivational videos, read a book, learn about this, learn about that, but nothing really came together. And so I suddenly started having these feelings of, and this is where I'll share my tools in a minute, of, right, I am really kind of in a unique and great position. However, I should be able to do more. I should be absolutely killing it. I have no excuses, because I am, as I said, supported by my family. Generally speaking, they don't get what I was doing and still don't, but they will support me in the sense of, they understand I need to be me and do my things my way. And I was like, I have a supportive family. I have a nice friendship group. I haven't got any big stresses. My house is rented. Like, there was nothing that happened to me in my childhood that was a big trauma. And for me, I was like, I have no reason not to succeed. So I got into a toxic habit of, well, I don't have trauma. I don't have half of the things that half of the world are experiencing. I don't have any of that. So I literally have no reason not to succeed. And whilst on a very literal level, that is absolutely true. Of course, we are in a privileged position compared to a lot of people who have very limited choices in this world. However, the reason I'm sharing this is that was a really toxic mindset to get into, because as soon as I started thinking like that, the pressure that I was all of a sudden imposing on myself, and the expectation I was putting on myself, literally put me into freeze mode, put me into fear mode, put me into, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And so that's why I'm bringing this up. So yes, the underlying message we can say is true, but is that right? And should we be, just because that's your situation, should we be accepting that? Absolutely not. We shouldn't be putting those kind of thoughts through our head. It was a very negative thought pattern. And so that was my first, in the new year, my first kind of real moment where my mind kind of went really muddled and all the self-doubt was kicking in and this toxic thought pattern happened. So I had to kind of really go inwards and think, okay, where the hell is this coming from? What am I doing? And so for me, my first few things that I did was bringing it back to being grateful every morning, because I was like, right, I have so much to be grateful for. I need to kind of stay in a really good vibration. I need to keep my energy high. So I started doing my gratitudes in the morning. Sometimes I would write it down on paper. Sometimes I write notes on my phone. Sometimes I'd just say them out loud in the shower when I was getting ready for the morning. So that was the first thing. And I definitely think moving my attention away from that negative thought pattern to things I'm grateful for really helped me just kind of ground a bit more, not feel so frantic and scared and fearful. The next thing that I actually did was started journaling. I had dabbled in journaling, and that was really helpful for me, but I'd never really, I kind of more just checked in with how I was at the, day to day, or how are you feeling today, etc. But I was like, I need to really get to the bottom of this weird toxic thought pattern that I'm getting into around doubt, and why I literally have no reason not to succeed, and why I'm putting this pressure on myself. And so I started journaling about it, and this is definitely something that's continued way past the first few months. But for me, I had to understand where this was coming from. And I just started asking myself questions, and it didn't come up immediately. And that was the thing that was really interesting, was it took a lot of digging and a lot of, because it was almost like my ego was trying to protect me. So for me, it was trying to keep me comfortable. It was trying to keep me safe. And I needed to understand why. But at the time, I didn't realize that's what it was doing. It was only as I was going on this journey. And I suddenly realized that after journaling and asking, let me just try, I don't remember exactly, but the kind of things that I'd be asking is, why do I feel that I need to put this pressure on myself? Why are these thoughts coming up? And I didn't always have answers. I would just kind of allow what came up, and it took me asking the questions over and over again, and sitting with it over and over again to kind of see what came up. And actually, what was really interesting, one of the first things that came to me was, well, two things. Number one, you don't deserve to be successful quickly and easily, because your dad has worked really hard. My dad's been worked really, really, really long hours for his whole life. He went from a council estate to earning really good money, worked his way through jobs, always provided for the family. And he was like, I remember back when I was younger, although they were supportive, just things like, oh, I'd say, oh, I want to be a millionaire, I want to get this salary, and they were like, you're not going to get that straight away, you're going to have to work really hard for that. And all of those kind of things, which wasn't necessarily, it wasn't intentionally trying to hinder me or put any ideas in my head. It was just what they believed. And obviously those beliefs get kind of, if you're around that, get imprinted into you. So that was the first one, is I can't succeed quickly and effortlessly. Or when I say effortlessly, obviously I know entrepreneurship is not easy, but in the sense of doing something that really lights you up and that is, your thing. And then the second thing was, I had a fear of success. If I become successful, because I already was very driven, I was already very different to people that I was around, not in any way other than I just had different views. I just had different ways of doing things. So I didn't really feel like I fitted in any way in some respects. And I was like, if I become successful, then I'm actually going to become less relatable, and I'm going to fit in even less. And that was a real revelation to me. But at the time, I didn't have anybody to really talk to about this, because nobody was doing the entrepreneur thing. Nobody was in my space. Everyone had a 9 to 5. Everybody was just wouldn't understand. And so I was left with these ideas, and I was like, wow, what do I do with them? And so it was a real weird time, really. It was like the highs in one respect, because I was left my job and I was pursuing my dreams, but I didn't know what that looked like. And then the lows of, wait, I've got all of this baggage that I need to deal with, I've got all this self-doubt, I've got all of these issues, not issues but things that are coming up, and I don't know what to do with them. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm in freeze mode, thinking, what am I going to do?
I love that. Journaling is so powerful, as you've just explained, because we often are so caught up in our head. And like you said, it took a long time to get to the bottom of it. And this is the thing, is quite often people will just do the basic stuff to scratch the surface and not really dive deep. And they're two really big blocks that you had, but actually are very, very common. with a lot of people, because we are brought up to believe that we have to work hard in order to make money. And therefore, there is an element of disbelief, lack of trust, and guilt in the fact that if I make money easily, then there's something wrong with that. Especially when you've been surrounded by people who have worked really hard. And so that is huge. And again, fear of success, I think, is something that's quite misunderstood, because so many people focus on the fear of failure, and that's such a massive one, that when someone then says, oh, you know, do you have a fear of being successful? People are like, no, me? No, I'd love to be successful. But obviously, like you say, what comes from that is that then almost isolates you from your peer group, because there is an element of not understanding. There could be an element of jealousy with you going on to do things they've perhaps always wanted to do, but don't have the courage to do it. And also, when you are successful, it's then, how is my life going to change? Like, I think I perhaps struggle with that a little bit, because I've set my business up so it's around my son. So whenever he is off, like you said earlier, whenever he is off, I am off. School holidays, and that was really important for me, and that's one of my values, and shows that I'm being successful. But then I think that on the flip side, you then think, well, if I get too busy, then I won't be able to do that. And so you have that inner conflict of I can't be too successful, because if I get too successful, then I won't be able to have the summer holidays off with my son. And that is a real battle to have. And again, as I said, because it's quite misunderstood, because no one really seems to focus on that part, they all focus on failure. People perhaps poo-poo that idea, or don't necessarily ever come up with that knowledge of, well, actually, I'm scared of being successful here, because I'm not sure what that's going to bring. How did you, once you discovered these two things, and knowing the magnitude of it and the impact that potentially could have on everything that you do, how have you managed to work through that?
Well, that's been a long journey. To be fair, I do feel as though those things are cleared from my point of view now. I can't pinpoint a specific thing that helped with that, except that I started doing a lot of inner work. And especially because obviously just after all this happened, we went into the pandemic. So we were dealing with a whole new world that nobody was familiar with, lots of time on our hands, all of that stuff. So that really gave me the opportunity to start investing in myself in terms of, from a strategy and learning point of view, learning new skills and stuff around entrepreneurship and business and all of those stuff. But then at the same time, it also allowed me to kind of really do some inner work. I did a few courses around manifestation and things like that, which don't seem related, but just learning more about the subconscious mind and things like that really aided my own work. But for me, it's just been a kind of an unfolding of getting to a point where it all came back to, okay. And I'd say, actually, thinking about it now, this has been two of the biggest things that have helped me get past all of those things. First of all, compassion for yourself. You can always have compassion for yourself, even if you don't love yourself in moments. And this applies to people who say, oh, I struggle with self-love. This applies to people who struggle with negative self-talk. This applies to like literally anybody who struggles with anything internal. Having compassion for yourself is one of the easiest things to do, because you don't always love yourself if you don't feel your best, or if you've reacted in a way that you used, like in a way that you don't like anymore, you know, an old version of you, and somebody's triggered you and you react in an old way. You don't always love yourself. You feel a bit crappy about it. But one thing you can do is learn to be compassionate for yourself. Okay, I messed up, but I'm human. I'm here. I'm going to correct this. It's okay. So for me, learning to be compassionate for myself. So Hannah, you're trying your best. You're doing the thing that everybody is saying is scary. You should be proud of yourself. And this wasn't something that was like immediate. I had to figure it out, and I had to start doing the work. So for me, that was when I caught myself in a negative headspace or sharing a negative thought in my mind, I would have to consciously and with awareness stop that and say, no, I'm going to actually choose to reframe that, or I'm going to, and I would literally this is like a thing that was going on in my head. I'd take a minute and I'd reframe it and say something positive, or I'd say I choose not to take on that belief. So it was a lot of inner mental chatter, which maybe, I don't know if everybody else has this. This was just what was happening for me. But doing that, the more I started becoming aware, the more I started flipping the script, the more I started changing that negative self-talk, the more I found myself being more positive about situations anyway, and then bringing in that element of compassion for myself. And then, as I said, you know, we are human. There's lots of stuff that goes on, and we're never going to have it 100% right. We're never going to be perfect. It's always going to be a journey. But in those moments where it's not going right, I can always be compassionate to myself and to others. But obviously, in what we're talking about is to myself. So the compassion element has been a big, almost unfolding of all my, so I definitely was a bit of a perfectionist. I really had very big perfectionist tendencies and pressure and competition with myself and always striving for better. I had these blocks, and so bringing in that compassion has almost unraveled that, because I can always basically reframe it. So compassion was the first thing, and then the next thing was basically just to kind of sit with things and give myself space, because in this world, I definitely think we constantly, you know, we're always constantly go, as you say. You don't get a chance to sit with your feelings. So I realized very quickly that these blocks are massive, but it's okay. They're there. But to sit with them and allow me to actually feel the emotions, ride through what that brings up, and actually work through that, rather than trying to suppress them more, because it's very easy to be like, oh, well, it's okay, I'll be successful, I'll be fine, positive thoughts, and what I like to call fake positivity. And actually, that's not going to help you either, because it's always going to sit underneath the surface, bubbling away. So for me, my tactic has been basically sitting with feelings and beliefs and thoughts, and just, as I said, journaling them out, deciding to rewrite what actually, you know. So yes, one thing I do is like, yes, this is a belief, and this is one perspective. If I'm successful, I'm going to be isolated. But then I would rewrite a new perspective, and so, like, I imagine somebody else came up to me and gave me a new perspective, and I'd write it down. So yes, okay, it could isolate me by being successful, but on the flip side, what if I meet new incredible people? What if actually my friends still love me for who I am, and we can still do the things we want to do? What if you know, looking around me, there's loads of successful people I know that have amazing support systems. And so I do this, like, what I call a what if game all the time, but also giving another perspective, because then it didn't feel so scary. It didn't feel so crazy that my mind was thinking about this. And it also felt more achievable to move away from being scared of that success, to actually moving into wanting to be successful. So I use that quite a lot, not just for those blocks, but for things that come up. That's like my main tactic. So those two things have been game changing to me, and that's honestly why I believe I am where I am now in terms of mentally, because I have allowed myself to do that. And as I said, I did a lot of that in lockdown. It was a real go inwards moment. And yes, I had my wobbly bits, and there was a lot of, I felt very boxed in, not being able to go out and do the things and be creative. But the first year of lockdown allowed me to elevate my mindset and my whole life in terms of that way, in a way I don't think I would have been able to do had I not had that time.
I love that. Honestly, Hannah, I love your energy, but they're two incredibly powerful messages that you've just shared with people. And I think compassion is underused on so many levels, and yet has the power to uplift us in ways that just nourish our soul and our energy. Yeah. I have this, if I have a negative thought, I flick it out of my head.
Yeah.
And I remember interviewing someone, and they're a sportsman, a professional cricketer, and he said every time he went onto the field, he would almost take stuff out of his head and flick it out into, like, not the crowd, but nowhere near the pitch. And then when he's on the pitch, that was it. He was clear-minded. But yeah, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just flicking a thought out of my head.
Yeah.
That's my anchor. But I think, again, if you can stop, like you say, stopping yourself and acknowledging the comments that you're saying and then changing it and speaking with compassion is incredible, because our voice is our voice. We can't get away from our voice. And we often speak to ourselves in a way that we just never would with other people.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting. Like,
yeah. One of my mottos is speak to yourself like you would your best friend, because that came from the compassion piece, because as you say, you wouldn't say that to, like, if your best friend was going through a tough time, you wouldn't be like, oh, you're a terrible person, why are you doing this? You'd be like, oh, don't worry, you know, we'll figure it out, it's going to be okay. So yeah, that is like a very important part of the whole process for me.
I think that's a game changer. I mean, my coach said to me, would you hang out with someone who spoke to you the way that you speak to yourself? And it's absolutely not. And it's like, that was a real kind of sting for me, because I'm so passionate, so protective and so loyal with my friends. If anyone's boom, I'm on to that person. And yeah, I wasn't displaying that behavior with myself. And it was like, wow, like, I think I'm being nice to myself, but Christ, I speak to myself like shit. That's not cool. That's cool, because if someone else spoke to me like that, I'd fucking go mental at them. Like, how dare they? But I was doing it, and somehow we all think that that's okay for us to do that to ourselves, and it's really not. So I love that, you know, that compassion played a massive part in being gentler and kind to yourself, and more loving. And that is a massive form of self-care. And again, I think there's a stigma with self-care and self-love, and they think, oh, you know, can't do that, I don't want to like work on loving myself. But just things like that, showing yourself kindness, is an amazing form of self-care, and does not take long. Like, you know, celebrating successes, talking yourself around, like if you make mistakes, all of that sort of stuff. You know, my son's 5, and I think, Christ, I really need to speak to myself the way that I speak to him, because I encourage him on so much. If he is feeling sad, I find something straight away to make him feel really positive about himself. And I'm like, if I can do that to him, why can I not do that to myself? Because I know it works. That's why I'm doing it to him. And yet I'm not doing it to myself. And the other one that you said about sitting with your feelings and emotions, this is something I think scares a lot of people. Because they feel that they can't slow down and can't just sit, because especially when you're trying to do something, then you've got to be seen to be busy, and it goes back to that whole working hard. So you've got to be seen to be being busy, but also when you sit with your emotions, sometimes people are scared of what's going to come up. But I actually think, you know, when you sit in silence or sit with your emotions, you get to rationalize, process, digest, absorb, and let go of so many different things. Which, you know, is vital. And I like your idea of the what if game. I think, you know, there's a lot of power that can come in to that.
And you can use it in lots of different scenarios as well, and that's the great thing. You know, I did a post the other day on Instagram with the self-care thing, like in the day, like, what if today, for just pure indulgent purposes, you did one thing that gave you joy? And then it makes it less scary for people, because, you know, doing something for yourself when you've got so much else to do and you might have kids and all of that can seem really scary and really difficult, and like, oh, selfish, why would I do that? Whereas actually, if you just make it lighter and make everything lighter and make life more of a game, it takes the pressure off you. And no, it's not easy immediately, and it's taken me time to get here. But once I started practicing that, that was the quickest unfolding, from going from being stressed, burnt out, having all these limiting beliefs, to being way freer and feeling lighter and feeling good about myself, having a strong self-image. And yes, there's still moments of self-doubt that crop up. We are human. And everything's going to come up. But I know how to deal with those, and I know how to work through them. I know how to, I don't want to use the word silence, but I know how to nip them in the bud and reframe them so that they are positive, and so that they actually propel me forward and not hold me back. And yes, everything about emotions coming up is difficult, but And I found that really difficult because I didn't know how to deal with emotions. But one of the biggest things I've learned is if we look at the emotions and let the feelings come head on from the beginning, the emotions move through you a lot quicker rather than suppressing, which a lot of people, including myself, have done in their lifetime. So then you've already suddenly got a big compounded amount of emotions. So that first few times probably is going to feel rough, and I'm not going to deny that, but you've got to think of it as a way to release your body of everything, because it will hold in your body. So whether people know this or not, but emotions can manifest into physical ailments, and I'm a big believer of that, having been where I have been and seeing what has happened to me on my journey, and people around me. So allowing the emotions to move through you by journaling, sitting with yourself, but also things like moving your body, letting, like, dancing around the room. I shake regularly if I've got things like I feel really emotional, or I feel like my energy is stuck or something, I shake out. Like, there's loads of things I've tried, but those, even, they're so little and they're free. Yes, you can do subconscious healing, and I know you're a hypnotherapist, there's so many things out there that you can tap into, theta healing, the lot. I've done it all, and I'm not saying that they don't have their place and they're great, but there's also things that people who are starting their journey can do and can use that are free and easy. You've just got to start being aware, start doing the little steps, and just taking it easy on yourself, and you will learn to go from being in a negative thought pattern and being in a negative space to slowly feeling more positive, learning how to work with your emotions, knowing that emotions aren't bad. They are there to show, they are there to highlight something to you. If you're feeling a certain way, then look at that and say, I feel this way because XYZ, and then move that energy, move that emotion, and you're going to feel 10 times better. And that's what I've been through. And that last year, 18 months, that's when I've, as I said, elevated myself to the next level in terms of how I feel and how grounded I feel in myself and how peaceful I feel, I would say.
Yeah. There's so much power in play and fun. I still think you are this younger version of me, because I shake.
Yeah.
Like this, or I get up and do a little dance and sing like no one's listening, because they wouldn't want to listen because I can't sing. But when you do things like that as well, and you move your energy, there's a smile that comes on your face, and it's very hard to be pissed off when you've got a smile on your face as well. But you've made such a valid point, and quite often, again, people get so caught up in any of these things thinking, oh, I'm not ready to make the changes yet because I haven't got the time to do the big stuff. I haven't figured out exactly everything that I need to do. And so people wait and hesitate and hold back. And therefore tomorrow never comes. But the reality is that a lot of these things are small millimeter changes that we can do. Big things. And if you change your mood by a millimeter or two, or that vibration up a notch, if you do that every single day, can you imagine the different path you will end up being on by just those small things? And playing around with what feels right for you is so essential. Going back to when we were growing up, we used to play all the time. Somewhere along the line, we got told to stop playing. The reality is that when you play and you use your imagination, your mind creates your reality. And again, somewhere along the line, we focus on what we don't want rather than what we do. You just for 5 minutes get lost in a little daydream of shaking, of dancing, of dreaming, of being out in nature, of stripping everything back and just showing gratitude and just being in the moment. That is fuel for your mind, the potential to catapult you into another level. It does, 5 minutes might feel like such a small thing, but if you're doing that with your mind every single day, you are building an opportunity to go down a totally different path.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a journey, and I'm not here from a day's work or the odd shake. I am here from consistently deciding to show up for myself, even when it's tricky, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't feel easy, because at the end of the day, I'm like, I've only got one life. I want to give my best, not just to myself, but to everybody else. And, if you'd spoke to me 4 or 5 years ago, I would have felt selfish saying I want the best for myself. I would have been like, and people think you're arrogant, and there's a whole lot of conditioning around just being able to prioritize yourself. But for me, having done the work, gone through the process, still going through the process, it's always a process, but again, I allow myself to have joy in the process, not just making it feel hard and heavy all the time. I allow myself to sometimes do the heavy work, but then I give myself a break. I'm like, life is for living. And again, that was something I wasn't doing. I was always like, I need to heal, I need to get better, I need to do this, I need to do that. And that in itself was hindering my progress, because there was the pressure. But just allowing ourselves to do a little bit more and take care of ourselves, we are going to be able to give so much more to other people, our families, our friends. Because if you're in a good, like, let's think about a situation when you get home from work and you've had a horrid day and you feel disgusting and you've had stress, you're most likely going to take it out on your kids and your partner and be dead stroppy, right? It is what it is. It's how we are as humans. But let's just say you've actually been able to start working on your mindset, doing the little things, feeling better about yourself, you're filling your cup, then you're going to get home and you ain't going to be stroppy with your kids. So it's not selfish, it's a priority, because it's going to ripple out to everybody around you. And that's one of the biggest things I realized is the more I work on my energy, I'm going to inspire others to do the same. And I'm going to give people permission to love themselves, to take care of themselves, to prioritize themselves, so that they can then allow that ripple effect to happen. And so that was one of the biggest things for me as well, I'll add, is moving. And as I said, this has not happened. This is more of a recent revelation. This has taken me a long time to get to, but making it about others rather than myself has helped me realize that it has taken the pressure off, right? If I'm there adding value to others, I can show up because I'm doing it for others, not myself. If I'm there doing the mindset work and raising my energy and pouring into my cup, I'm doing it for others because I know I'm going to be a better friend, a better girlfriend, a better daughter. So once I started as well looking at it like that, I was like, whoa, the pressure's gone now, right? Yeah. I don't have that same pressure. And especially with everything that's happened with COVID and everything like that, people's mindsets, and I've seen a lot of division, and I've nearly been sucked up into it myself at times. I'm not even going to deny that. Again, we are human, we are not perfect, but I took a step back and realized that everybody has different truths and perspectives in this matter. But one thing I really realized during this time was people need elevating, people need people with good energy, with good intentions to elevate them, because everybody's struggling. And so just having that mindset shift really helped just take that pressure off. And I think that's it's never selfish to prioritize yourself. And I don't think people share that enough, because they say, fill your own cup before others. But why? The reason being is because you can serve other people better if you're filled up. You can't serve other people. And when I say serve, that could be in a business sense, but also a family sense or friendship sense. If you are constantly drained, constantly stressed, constantly ratty, constantly short with people, just because you're not giving yourself the time and the love that you need.
100%. Amen to that, my darling. Amen. The ripple effect is huge. It is so huge. And when we make it about others, then it sits nicer with ourselves sometimes. But the reality is other people benefit so much more by us looking after ourselves. Equally, we let other people down when we don't look after ourselves. And so that's why, like on a plane, when they say put the oxygen mask on yourself first, I was like, are you actually joking? There's no way that I would do that. I would obviously look to help my son first. But now I'm like, no, I get it. Because what good is it going to be to him if I can't help? And I help myself to help others. So powerful. Hannah, you've been amazing. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Loved our chat. I think you've shared some really, really powerful things that have the potential to really help a lot of people. And that is what this is all about. So I really do appreciate your honesty and coming on the show today to share that with us. How can people stay connected to you?
So I'm currently mid-website building, so I'm not available to check out on the website, but I have my podcast, Empower Thyself with Hannah Garner, which I know you're coming on shortly, so I'm really excited to do role reversal with that. That's a really good tool because I share a lot of stuff on there, and mainly Instagram, so at Hannah Kate Garner. I am very active on there. I will love to hear people's DMs, and if you get any takeaways from this, please tag us, because I always love to hear what people have benefited from. I'm a podcast junkie. I've learned so much from them, and so now that it's role reversals and I'm either a guest or doing these episodes, when people tell me, oh, I really resonated with this, or I took this away, I'm just like, yes, we've done what we needed to do here. So they're the best ways to get me, and I've got like a link in my bio for any of the bits that people want to kind of look into.
Awesome. Well, I'll add all of that into the show notes. But it's
amazing.
Thank you so much. And like Hannah said, you know, if there's any questions that have come off the back of this episode, then please reach out to either one of us. We will make sure that we're there to support you. But thank you once again. And
yeah, thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Oh, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. And thank you everybody for listening. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. So bye for now.
Bye.